you have to ask, okay, can you explain that to me? Help me to understand what does contributory negligence mean? What is...
Robin, just very quickly, I take John's approach to people with discomfort, and I invite the other parties to embrace the person's need. I read the briefs when they're sent to me. I don't recount the briefs, but I do require the parties to the mediation to still present their case. So I am perhaps, I don't want to say better informed, but I can see similarities and or differences between that which is in the brief and that which is recounted by the party, taking into account, of course, the possibility that some things may or may not be recalled in detail, but I try to do both. That's how I approach it.
Judge Louis, you want to take a bite at it?
Sure. I like on that theme. I agree with what I said about the person who shows discomfort. I think you have to acknowledge their discomfort and not necessarily be empathetic, but certainly acknowledge that they're having discomfort and go with that. And if the other side does not react to it, they don't react. That's how it's unfolding. But it's not for you. You have to acknowledge what's before you. With regard to briefs, I think the more you get, the more informed you are, the more confidence will be instilled in you if you know the brief. Because you may get into a session where counsel will turn to you and say, well, how about Dr. X? Dr. X says this. And you're scratching your head, Dr. X, and you never read the report. It may not be important in you conducting the mediation, but the confidence that you may have with the person has been breached. So to maintain the confidence, as he says about Dr. X, I sometimes interrupt, say, yeah, I know he says this, but he or she didn't say X and Y. And there's the gap, and this is where we have to work with. Because the doctor will not cover everything. They're cagey sometimes in their remarks. But I think it will instill confidence between the mediator and the parties or counsel if you indicate that you understand, you've read the report, or you're familiar with it.
Thank you. Robin?
One more question.
No, don't hog the show now.
One more. What ought a mediator to do when you see that, in particular, the claimant, somebody who may be disadvantaged, they have serious injuries, and their lawyer is clearly not prepared or not taking the mediation very seriously, and you see the matter heading towards an agreement that you consider as mediator is not a fair settlement? What does the mediator do? Thanks a lot.
Can I start with that?
That's loaded. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think you have to understand what your role is as mediator. Your role is not to approve the settlement. If the person has representation, then I think they have counsel. If they don't, do they understand the terms of the settlement? Is it entered in voluntarily? It's not for you to ratify. It's not for you to approve. It's not even you to look behind the scenes as to what's driving this person to accept it. If, on the other hand, there's some infirmity they don't understand, then that's another issue. But your role is to facilitate a settlement that the process is fair, not necessarily the outcome, because what may be fair to you may not be to someone else, and vice versa. That person thinks it's fair, that with their counsel. And I've seen, I think all of us have been probably in situations where we would scratch our heads and say, why would they settle for so little? Well, how do you know that back in the office, there's a ticking bomb report that if this case continues further, it will blow up the case, and what's on the table won't even be on the table. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you have to second guess. The process has to be fair, it has to be voluntary, and everyone has to understand what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a question? Yes, I see that hand. Oh, somebody's telling me it's time to stop, I suppose. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to take one more question in fairness, and then I have to end this session. So this lovely lady in the polka dot. Could you get a mic to her quickly, please?
Well, I had a mic for a question.
Oh,
Defer to the lady if she wants to.
Well, you know, you have a lady chair, so ladies before gents.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. I'm Nira Ramprasad. I'm a little concerned about our attorneys. Concerned because I'm wondering if we are going to be settling all these cases out of court. And I do recognize that the civil procedure rules require you to go to mediation, ADR. Then what is going to happen to the profession, and aren't you all going to end up bankrupt?
Who wants to take that?
Well, let me, I don't want to hog the floor, but we've had so I come back from background where that was really a concern, whether, whether the income of lawyers would be affected because now they can't go to trial. And actually, they process more cases. They're busier than ever. Notwithstanding those thresholds and all those other stumbling blocks, because in the end, if you have an injured party and you have a claimant, and the claimant is saying, I'm hurt, and the insurance company is not paying, you're going to have a lawsuit, and it's got to get resolved in one of two ways, by trial or by mediation. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that should be of any concern, if I understood the question correctly, about what will happen with fees,
Thank you. I think I'm going to get scolded if I conduct this.
Yes,
Can I just have a crack at it? I think we just recently had 300 plus attorneys being admitted to practice in Trinidad. And every year we have about the same amount coming out. That's going to be the trend. Attorneys are resilient, and I think you may find more attorneys not being advocates, but finding themselves in other areas. And if your fee earning is diminished in law practice, then it's up to you to go find something else to do. And that's the bottom line.
I think John has something very burning that he wants to see.
Well, it's not really, not really burning, but a combination of how it's been answered so far. We in Jamaica have gone through that over the past decade, and I am pleased to tell you that it's not a frightening proposition. Once the attorneys start to engage in mediation, they embrace it. They recognize that their time becomes more, they have much more time to do more work. They realize that they can get quicker settlements. It becomes a very positive approach. In fact, quite a number of attorneys have rushed to become mediators as well. So you tend to find it's a very self-fulfilling process. And I think you'll have the same situation here in Trinidad. In fact, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Please join us, and just let's thank our panelists. It's been very interesting. Thank you.
Resolve this matter. Real neutral and safe. A mediator is there to advise us through it. Nothing is imposed on you. You must be comfortable and we sort out this issue. Yeah. Whoa, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, while Julian and her panel enjoy their photo opportunity, we will move right into the next session. Because we are about 20 minutes after our start time, and we would like to honor the panel that follows and give them sufficient time to complete before the end of the afternoon. My name is Beverly Harry Emmanuel, and I'm a member of the Mediation Board. And we have a very distinguished member of the board coming to present to you, His Honor Anthony Gafour, who is the chairman of the Tax Appeal Board, a superior court of record. Now, His Honor has an excellent resume, but I am sure he also has excellent stuff to share with you. So until he gets here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who he is. I'm sure I will not be done. He's a certified mediator in civil and family mediation and a mediation trainer. He's a senior lecturer in international law, ethics, and mediation studies at UE. He's the honorary secretary of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, the Caribbean branch that is. He is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and a member of faculty of the Institute, UK. He is the first in the world to achieve the Executive Certificate in Conflict Management from the University of Windsor in conjunction with Stitfeld Handy, a Canadian ADR specialist. He's second in the Commonwealth Caribbean to be awarded a diploma in International Commercial Arbitration of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. He's a member of the International Law Association, Caribbean branch. He's a member of the International Association of Tax Judges. He's a member of the Mediation Board of Trinidad and Tobago and a very well-esteemed colleague. And he is a national and regional representative of the Mediation Committee International Bar Association. Please welcome His Honor Anthony Gafour, who will share with us this afternoon on mediation practice, standards and quality, 10 years and beyond. Thank you. Please welcome him.
Thank you very much, Beverly. And can I just say that the good news for you is, well, in a sense, the good news for me is I have less speaking time. The good news, or the bad news for you, is that you also have less sleeping time. So having said that, I'd like to get straight into the topic. Now, we've heard a lot during the course of the symposium about mediation and probably not that much about issues of standards. And of course, as a regulatory authority, this is in a sense what the board is there to do. In the interest of time, I will try to skip over some of the slides that I had in mind to show you. But what I wanted to do was, in a sense, to look back a little bit at the last 10 years because, we have marked now the 10th anniversary of the Mediation Act as of the 27th of February, when it received the assent of His Excellency the President, 27th of February 2004. And of course, the title can also be interpreted in such a way as we're looking forward to the next decade or so. And so perhaps this is as good a time as any to consider the working of the Act, the board, and in a sense, issues of standards and quality control. So what I propose to do very briefly is to look at one or two key objectives of the Act, to identify the needs of trainers and trainees within that context, and possibly look ahead to the next decade and see what we might expect to find or what we think might be helpful in terms of charting the progress of mediation and ADR in general. Now, I just want to start off by making some very preliminary observations, and that is in a sense that culture and context are all important. And we've heard some presentations of that. Indeed, the last presentation for today, I think, will focus on that as well. But we cannot ignore the fact that mediation is hopefully blossoming within the context of a particular social and political environment, which may not always be receptive to that. I think that we're hearing more and more attorneys coming on board, and I think that's very important. But we can't divest ourselves of the political structure that we have inherited. And in a sense, while, for example, we heard from the Honorable Minister of Legal Affairs this morning about some of the initiatives that his ministry is taking in mediation, there's also a sense that the type of politics encourages a level of adversarial litigation. Well, I would say that, an adversarial approach which may well find itself reflected in the litigation models that we've had so far. And in some ways, this is common around the world, or certainly as far as the Commonwealth is concerned. So the political dynamics are critical in terms of how they might impact upon the future of mediation. And then, of course, we're also operating, in a very multi-ethnic, multicultural society. And I think these are issues that are reflected in the Act. In fact, the Act does refer to issues of diversity being an important consideration in terms of the approval of mediation programs. And sometimes what I think can share with you is that some programs come before the board, and one of the considerations that perhaps we've often felt is that the extent to which diversity and culture are truly reflected, that we are trying to craft mediation to something that really is truly our own, despite the fact that we see connections with what happens around the world, it is not always an issue that is being pursued as well as it should be. Now, obviously, we're seeing a significant increase in mediators. We've heard a statistic yesterday that we now have over 400 mediators operating in Trinidad and Tobago, some of whom perhaps are, able to find regular work, others perhaps struggling to some extent. And like other areas, like other professions as well, too, there's a question of, where this is going to go and the competitiveness that is now coming into this industry and so on. I think we can also say that numbers are likely to increase as time goes on because of a particular enabling environment, and it's that issue that I want to turn to fairly quickly. So what do I mean about an enabling environment? Well, one issue is that we are seeing an increase in the number of institutions that are engaged in mediation and offering mediation training, and I've highlighted a couple of them there, which I don't think I need to go through. Most recently, we now have the National Center for Dispute Resolution under the auspices of the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and I think that, in a sense, is a very positive